We had Coach Reed on a couple weeks ago, Carl Reed, and he's put out a lot of tweets, a lot of motivation. We have one on the screen now talking about athletes and really how they need to behave. Always eager to say hello to Coach. Thank you for joining us, Coach Reed. And before we get too deep into it, I would just like you to talk about what you did there. I realize you do a lot. But you seem to be spending a lot of time lately and trying to encourage people and maybe help them on the right path. Good afternoon.
I think with that tweet there, what I was really talking about is, we're all over the country for camps. We got big time prospects with everybody's worried about NIL bags and going in the portal so they can get more money. But one of the fundamental things that guys are missing is you have to be a good football player. And part of being a good football player is knowing how to execute your assignment. When you go play at Georgia for Kirby Smart, or when you go to Alabama and play for Nick Saban, can you learn the philosophy of those defenses and the schematic severity that it has? And a lot of guys are missing that. And when they get to college, they're having a lot of problems.
And it seems like there ought to be a better process for them to figure that out. But Coach, you deal with a lot of young players who are matriculating. What do you see early on, and how can you, or how have you, or how will you guide them so they can get to the right place?
Well, so many guys don't have an understanding of the recruiting process, and it becomes a celebrity affair, especially now with the NIL money. Guys are really focused on how much money can I get. Imagine being a guy that has aspirations of playing in the NFL, and you sit down at a final list with 5 of the best universities in the country, and you're not worried about how you fit in the system. You're not worried about the depth chart and how you're going to get on the field. You're worried about NIL money. So now what you're telling me is, because some insurance salesman that's part of a collective, he guarantees you $50,000 more dollars, you're not going to go to the program that is your best football fit. And the NFL money is going to always supersede the NIL money.
But Coach, I think back to when I was that age and you were that age, and if somebody threw $100 in front of me, it was going to influence me where to go. Most people don't have money at this point in their lives. How can you stress to them? How do you get across to them? Listen, there may be millions ahead. Maybe tens of millions, maybe hundreds of millions. Don't blow it for a couple of bucks right now. You're on the front line. What do you tell these young men?
Well, it's always not just a couple of bucks. One thing that we haven't stressed either, Paul, in this business is that there's a lot of guys who were made NIL promises and they never got all of their money. There were a lot of promises made, and some of these collectives are in shambles right now because they don't have the money to pay out some of these things. A lot of infighting at some of these universities going on with collectives and boosters. Guys making promises, and when it's time to put that money on the table, the money's not always there. So prospects need to do a deep dive in front of that also.
Talking to Coach Reed, Coach, in terms of the right places, you mentioned the 2 best coaches in the game. I'm not asking you to name names, but what should young people avoid? Where should they avoid? Is there a composite of the kind of thing that you may have alluded to a minute ago, but what should they be thinking about when they hear a lot of promises?
It's not about what to avoid, it's what to know you're looking for and where do you want to go to. Number one, you need to be looking at, do they play a scheme that fits my skill set? If you're a guy who's an edge rusher and you want to rush the passer, why are you picking a team that runs a 3-4 that's requiring their defensive ends to play almost like defensive tackles? That's not going to get you to the next level. You might be a great man corner, but are you going to go to a system that plays primarily a cover 2 defense? You have to be in a scheme that fits. You're a tailback, but you're going to an air raid team that throws the ball 60 times a game. You need to be looking at those kind of things first. And you need to be looking at how you're going to fit in the system and prepare yourself to compete for that university.
Who's advising the top tier players?
Well, a lot of times, nobody. A lot of times everybody is catering to those guys, and everybody is just trying to make those guys happy because they don't want to lose them, or they don't want to lose access to them. If you have one of the top guys in the country, that means that you're getting to meet all of the big time coaches. That means that it's a lot of things going on at your high school that don't normally get to go on. And so it could also be very beneficial for the high school coach. I know some of the relationships I built when I had big time guys in my program were very beneficial to me. And so in some cases, we treat those kids like our friends and not like the guys who are supposed to be advising them and telling them what to do. And I think that you have to be very firm sometimes with 16s and 17-year-olds, but some guys are scared to do that.
Coach, how much more difficult is it today on the college level? You got a player who you had to give money to, however you gave it to him, or maybe you had to keep him or get him from someplace else. How does that affect, or does it affect, what happens next?
Well, when you pay a guy, it changes the relationship for sure. But I think the biggest thing is the guys who are trying to put themselves in the middle of the payment to a player. A lot of guys out here that are working with kids, skimming money off the top, and the kid may not even be getting all the money on some of those deals. So is the kid getting real information? Is it coming from a genuine place, or is it a disingenuous relationship? Because anywhere where money is, it changes a lot in the game.
Who are these people that whether middlemen, runners, agents? It just seems like they are everywhere. They're connected. I'm sure in your position, you know them, but can you give us a composite of who these folks are?
Well, they're guys that are aspiring to be millionaires. When you look at the Rich Paul story, everybody says, well, I can be Rich Paul. Well, you can't be rich because, number one, you don't have LeBron James. And number two, what people don't realize about Rich Paul, he was not LeBron James' agent initially coming into the NBA. LeBron started off with Aaron Goodwin. Then he went to Leon Rose and CAA, and Rich Paul was getting trained and developed as how he was going to handle that business at the beginning. So he didn't just jump into handling all the business right away. It was a lot of studying. It was a lot of education. Maverick Carter, who handles his business, was the guy who did an internship with Nike. They didn't just pick guys up off the couch and say, go manage $1 million.
Talking to Coach Reed. Coach, right now it's a critical time. A lot of players have already committed. There's still some out there. Give us the lay of the land on the calendar right now, and where are we? And especially now that players are making their decision, their determination so early so they can be there in December when the regular season ends.
Well, something that has changed is now with the early signing period, guys would normally be going to camps during this time, but they're taking official visits right now. And the NCAA just said, instead of just taking 5, those guys can go on as many visits as they want. So guys are on campuses right now, and these are the top players in the country, and they're deciding where they fit, what schools they want to go to. And so it's the beginning of that process. And you have to move quicker now than you did in the past, because come November and December, when the transfer portal is jumping, if you waited till then, a lot of those spots that you were promised in June won't be available come December.
And Coach, how important is momentum in recruiting? You see a school start early and they start to build on it, and the top players, you know how it works, we don't. They tend to look around and go, man, everybody's going to that school. As you would think that might dissuade some, but young guys like to go where the action is, don't they?
It's very relationship based. It's a lot of cool factor involved, social media content and shoes and different things. They make a big difference in the way kids look at situations. And then all of these guys are camping together. Relationships get built. A lot of guys making decisions for the wrong reason. I would always advise players to look at the situation for what it's going to do for you. Because if you jump on board with a bunch of other guys, it may be the situation for somebody else, but it may not be the best deal for you.
I covered recruiting a million years ago, and you were in the home. The coach mattered. The mom really mattered a lot. I'm not saying because I don't know right now. How important is the family unit in these decisions?
Well, what's most important now, Paul, is the money. The money that guys want, the money that guys are expecting. And a lot of times they don't have a real concept of what their true value is. Just because somebody promised you $300,000 doesn't mean that you're ever going to see $300,000. What happens in a lot of these places when they give you that kind of money and on Saturday afternoon you don't bust a grape? On Saturday afternoon you drop 3 passes. All of a sudden you look for that direct deposit and it might not be in there.
What an education we get every time we talk to you, Coach. Be well. Thank you so much for dropping in. I have 1,000 more questions. We'll get to you soon and continue this as we are knee-deep into an important time of the year. It may seem quiet on the outside, but you heard the coach there. We'll take a break right now. More of your phone calls at 855-242-7285. An hour from now, we'll get into what happened.